Unit 3. Human Activities in 18th Century Taiwan. Lecture 8. Liu Shi's 2 Panorama Prints of Taiwan, Daily Lives. There are 12 paintings in the document titled Liu Shi's 2 Panorama Prints of Taiwan. They include images of the daily lives of the indigenous plains peoples in 18th century Taiwan, offering a precious opportunity to take a look at their economic and social activities. In this lecture, we are going to explore the way they ate, dressed, built houses, and moved by looking closely at these paintings. 1. Growing, cutting, and pounding rice. 1. Indigenous plains peoples and an idyllic farming scene. We learn from historical records that in the 18th century, indigenous plains peoples in Taiwan had interactions with the Han Chinese and adopted the Chinese way to grow rice. In the piece titled Growing Rice, we can see a tribal woman carrying her baby on her back with a belt and at the same time plowing the land with the help of a buffalo. The man at the lower left corner of the same piece is trying to dig up an agricultural waterway. At the lower right corner, an indigenous plains family is eating food under the trees by the farmland. What an idyllic scene it is! The words written on the map said that rice matured by October every year in southern Taiwan and by July in central and northern Taiwan. In another piece titled Cutting Rice, we can see indigenous people, both men and women, picking up mature rice with their bare hands. When doing the chore, all the men go topless while women have their bodies covered. We can see a man squatting by the field, that is the one in the position of collecting crops and tying them into bundles to transport. There are a man and a woman at the lower left corner. They both have rice bundles on their backs, bringing them all the way back to their tribe. To store the bundles for future consumption, rice has to be dried out. To do so, indigenous peoples in Taiwan had come up with an idea to dry the bundles, that being hang and keeping all the bundles upside down, and that's exactly what the man and woman are doing. Back in the 18th century, the indigenous people didn't thresh the rice before storage. Rice hulls would only be removed in a later process called pounding. They had storerooms built next to their homes. The storerooms had their walls made of bamboo and roofs made of thatch. Rice bundles would be hung upside down in storerooms. In the piece titled Pounding Rice, we see a smaller building next to the main house, and yes, that's a storeroom. In Chinese, it's called a hejian, which literally means rice room. The floor of the rice room was built higher than the ground and had additional boards rimmed around the floor in order to keep mice away from the rice. Before enjoying rice, they would pound it by using wooden mortars and pestles to remove rice hulls. The mortars were made of giant wooden trunks. A regular mortar usually came with a 4-foot-long perimeter and with a height as tall as 2 to 3 feet. Both the top and the bottom side of the trunk were hollowed out so both could be used as a mortar. They also punched 3 to 4 holes on the side so users could insert their fingers and turn it upside down easily. The pestles were also made of wood, thin in the middle and thick at the edges, a shape easy to grip. We can also see 4 women pounding rice in front of the house in the picture. The elder man on the right is holding a container in his hands, ready to collect the rice that has been pounded up. Chickens below are pecking grains falling to the ground in the process. 2 men are carrying their prey on their backs, showing that they have probably just finished hunting. Looking at and deciphering this image, historians have come to a conclusion that plains indigenous peoples in Taiwan had a clear system of labor divisions by sex. 2. Growing taro and weaving. For some tribes, taro was among the primary staple foods. In the piece titled Growing Taro, we see indigenous people in Neishan, Kaohsiung digging holes on the ground for taro planting. We can also see them storing taro into the ground after having it roasted. In this way, they can have it whenever they want. Historians believe that they chose to plant taro instead of rice because people in Neishan didn't know how to grow rice. Women weavers. Indigenous women in early Taiwan were all capable of weaving cloth. To have their faces tattooed, a traditional celebration that marked female adulthood, indigenous women had to show their ability to weave. According to the words written on the painting titled Weaving Cloth, women in the Anli tribe, the Dajiadong tribe, and the Dajiaxi tribe in Danshui Haifangting were all good at weaving. South of Danshui Haifangting, women in tribes of Changhua County were all skillful as well. Among all the experts, women in the Dajia tribe were said to be the best. Indigenous people had built at least 2 models of weaving machines. One of the models were made of round logs with perimeters as long as 3 feet. To build this model, they would hollow out a log and have a bamboo stick go through the log to serve as a pivot. To operate this model, one would have to swirl the threads around the log and fasten a piece of wood on their waists with slings to better control the machine. The other model was of the ones we see on the painting. These machines were also made of round logs. To operate one of them, one had to sit on the ground and step against the logs to use shuttles, just as what we see on the painting. There were different ways to make threads. Some people collected tree bark and pounded it into threads. Some mixed up plants like Bameria and Rubiaceae to make them. Still others used fur from dogs or other animals to do so. To create threads with extra gloss and color, one could simply mix up all the threads produced in the ways mentioned above. The beautiful threads made this way were called dagobum. 1. Building a house crossing a river. Let's build a house. We live in a society where most people pay to buy their houses. But in early Taiwan, Plains indigenous peoples would have to mobilize the whole tribe to build a home. The first thing they would do to build a house was to lay a foundation. Having that done, they performed a divination to decide when to start the construction. When the day came, all people available in the tribe came with their shovels to help. They would dig on the ground to collect stones and piled them up to make a 5 feet tall base. Then they would set up columns and walls and beams made up of bamboo. To build the roof, they used thatch instead of tiles. They did not build roofs directly on top of the columns, but had them constructed on nearby ground. They would have the roof built upside down, making it look like a boat with a flat bottom and up-pointing edges. When the roof was ready, they carried it to the site where the columns stood and flipped over the roof and placed it on the top. To finish the construction, they just had to do one more thing, to build a staircase to the entrance. After the work was all completed, the owner of the new house would share wine and food with everybody. They would drink and dance and sing and have fun together. Let's cross rivers. There are tens of rivers and streams in Taiwan. A large number of them are wide and long rivers, making it next to impossible to cross any of them during summer because it rains heavily in that season. Streams too strong to pass. Back in the 18th century, Sun Moon Lake and Taipei Basin were among the only places where you could see people cross rivers on small boats. Indigenous peoples, on the other hand, crossed rivers in their traditional ways. Some of them fastened hollowed gourds to their waists, which gave them extra buoyancy to swim across rivers. In the places like Mujialiuwan tribe and Mado tribe in Zhulo County, the tribal chief and his interpreter could cross rivers on a raft with his men dragging the raft. In the piece titled Crossing a River, we can see tribal men holding the edge of the raft, while swimming, pushing it forward. The ones on the raft are the chief and his interpreter, with their belongings on board. Another tribal man is carrying a piece of baggage on his head ahead of the raft. 2 tribal men on the left-hand side of the raft were driving cattle in the river. The 2 ahead of them were trying to swimming across the river with hollowed gourds on them. All these images remind us about the difficulties the ancestors of Taiwanese people had undergone in the past.